foolish tale was anything but dignified and valuable history. There was not an atom of value in it, and whilst they thought it distressing and pathetic, it was in fact not pathetic at all, but actually ridiculous. At least it seemed so to me, and it seems so yet. Indeed, I know it was, because it made Joan laugh, and the more sorrowful it got, the more it made her laugh, and the Peladon said that he could have laughed himself if she had not been there, and Noel Rongaison said the same. It was about old Laxart going to a funeral there at Domremy 2 or 3 weeks back. He had spots all over his face and hands, and he got Joan to rub some healing ointment on them, and while she was doing it and comforting him, and trying to say pitying things to him, he told her how it happened. And first he asked her if she remembered that black bull calf that she had left behind when she came away, and she said indeed she did, and he was a dear, and she loved him so, and was he well, and just drowned him in questions about that creature, and he said it was a young bull now, and very frisky, and he was to bear a principal hand at a funeral, and she said, the bull? And he said, no, myself, but said the bull did take a hand, but not because of his being invited, for he wasn't. But anyway, he was away over beyond the fairy tree, and fell asleep on the grass with his Sunday funeral clothes on, and a long black rag on his hat and hanging down his back, and when he woke he saw by the sun how late it was, and not a moment to lose, and jumped up terribly worried, and saw the young bull grazing there, and thought maybe he could ride part way on him and gain time. So he tied a rope around the bull's body to hold on by, and put a halter on him to steer with, and jumped on and started. But it was all new to the bull, and he was discontented with it, and scurried around and bellowed and reared and pranced, and Uncle Laxart was satisfied and wanted to get off and go by the next bull or some other way that was quieter, but he didn't dare try, and it was getting very warm for him too, and disturbing and wearisome, and not proper for Sunday. But by and by, the bull lost all his temper and went tearing down the slope with his tail in the air and blowing in the most awful way, and just in the edge of the village he knocked down some beehives, and the beeves turned out and joined the excursion and soared along in a black cloud that nearly hid those other two from sight, and prodded them both, and jabbed them, and speared them, and spiked them, and made them bellow and shriek and bellow, and here they came, roaring through the village like a hurricane, and took the funeral procession right in the center, and sent that section of it sprawling, and galloped over it, and the rest scattered apart and fled, screeching in every direction, every person with a layer of bees on him, and not a rag of that funeral left but the corpse. And finally, the bull broke for the river and jumped in, and when they fished Uncle Laxart out, he was nearly drowned, and his face looked like a pudding with raisins in it. And then he turned around, this old simpleton, and looked a long time in a dazed way at Joan, where she had hid her face in a cushion, dying apparently, and says, "What do you reckon she's laughing at?" And old Dark stood looking at her the same way, sort of absently, scratching his head, but had to give it up, and said he didn't know. Must have been something that happened when we weren't noticing. Yes, both of those old people thought that that tale was pathetic, whereas to my mind it was purely ridiculous, and not in any way valuable to anyone. It seemed so to me then, and it seems so to me yet. And as for history, it does not resemble history, for the office of history is to furnish serious and important facts that teach, whereas this strange and useless event teaches nothing that I can see, except not to ride a bull to a funeral, and surely no reflecting person needs to be taught that.